Hi, I'm Nicola, the people mentor. You know that feeling when you walk into a workplace and you can just sense something's off? Maybe it's the way people avoid eye contact in meetings, or how everyone seems to tiptoe around certain topics. That invisible something you're picking up on. That's culture. And here's the thing, as a leader, you can't fix what you can't see clearly. That's where the cultural web comes in. This simple model has made such a difference for so many of the managers I work with. Look, culture isn't some fluffy HR concept. It's literally how we do things around here, and it's either working for you or against you. There's no neutral. I remember working with Mary, a team leader who was pulling her hair out because her team kept making the same mistakes repeatedly. She'd have those dreaded conversations about performance, but nothing would stick. Have you experienced this? The breakthrough came when we mapped out the actual dynamics in her workplace using the cultural web. Suddenly, she could see why her team weren't changing, because the culture itself was reinforcing the very behaviours she was trying to fix. The cultural web breaks down culture into 6 key areas. Think of them as the invisible forces shaping every interaction in your workplace. First, routines and rituals. These are your everyday patterns. How meetings actually run, not how they're supposed to run. What happens when someone joins the team, and how decisions really get made. I worked with one manager who realised their weekly team meetings had become complaint sessions. No wonder morale had plummeted. The routine was literally programming negativity into the team. Next comes stories. What tales do people tell about your workplace? Are they stories of success and growth, or war stories about that time everything went wrong? These stories are powerful because they tell people what's really valued, not what's written in the company handbook. Another part of the cultural web model is symbols. This is everything from your office layout to the language people use. Do managers have fancy offices while everyone else is crammed together? Do people use jargon that excludes others? These symbols send messages about power and belonging. Next is control systems. What gets measured and rewarded? And I mean actually rewarded, not just what's in the policy manual. If you say you value collaboration but only reward individual achievements, guess what behaviour you're going to get? Then comes power structures. Who really has influence? Sometimes it's not the person with the biggest title. It might be the admin assistant who's been there 20 years and knows where all the bodies are buried. Understanding these invisible power networks is crucial if you want to create real change. Finally, organisational structures. How rigid or flexible are things? Can people collaborate across departments, or are there invisible walls everywhere? Here's where this gets practical. When you understand your cultural web, those difficult conversations become so much clearer. Remember Mary? When she mapped out her culture, she realised that her team's mistakes weren't about capability. They were about a culture that punished initiative and rewarded playing it safe. No wonder they kept waiting for detailed instructions instead of thinking for themselves. Once she understood this, she could have completely different conversations. Instead of "you made another mistake," it became "I can see our systems are set up in a way that makes it risky for you to make decisions." Let's talk about how we can change that. The beauty of the cultural web is its simplicity. You just need to observe what's happening around you honestly. Look at your workplace through these 6 lenses. What routines are we stuck in that aren't serving us? What stories keep getting told? What symbols might be sending the wrong message? What are we actually measuring and rewarding? Where does real influence sit? How easy is it for people to work together? Here's something that makes this even more powerful. Understanding that different people experience and shape culture differently based on their communication style. I use DISC assessments with my clients because when you combine cultural mapping with understanding individual styles, everything clicks into place. Think about it, a high D person might see that control-heavy culture as entirely normal, while a high S person feels crushed by it. An I-style person thrives on collaborative stories, but a C-style person wants data-driven evidence. When you understand both the cultural web and the different ways people navigate it, you can have conversations that land. You're not just talking about changing culture, you're speaking to each person in a way that makes sense to them. Once you've mapped your culture, here's a simple but powerful exercise I do with every client. Stop! What cultural practices need to end? Maybe it's those Monday morning meetings that have become blame sessions, or the unspoken rule that you can't disagree with senior management. Start. What new behaviours do you want to see? Perhaps it's celebrating wins more openly or creating space for people to admit mistakes without fear. Continue. What's working well that you want to protect? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This isn't about completely overhauling everything overnight. It's about being strategic with your cultural changes. When you start seeing culture clearly, everything changes. Those team members who seemed difficult? Often they're just responding logically to the cultural signals around them. I had another client, John, who was constantly frustrated with his team's lack of initiative. Through the cultural web, he realised that his company's control systems were so tight that people had learnt that taking initiative meant getting in trouble. The culture was literally training people to wait for permission. Once he saw this, he could change his approach completely. Instead of having yet another conversation about being more proactive, he started having conversations about psychological safety and how they could create space for smart risks. That's why I love combining the cultural web with my discussions on holding difficult conversations. You get the big picture view and the practical tools to have those game-changing conversations. If this is resonating with you, here's what I'd suggest. Do a quick cultural audit. Spend 15 minutes this week jotting down observations in each of the 6 areas. Look for patterns. What themes keep showing up? Pick one thing. Don't try to fix everything at once. What's the one cultural shift that would have the most significant impact? Plan your conversation. How would you discuss this with your team using curiosity rather than criticism? Because here's what I've learned after years of helping managers navigate this stuff. You can't just tell people to change. You have to change the invisible forces that shape their behaviour every single day. The cultural web gives you the map. The difficult conversations training gives you the navigation tools. Together. That's how you create the kind of workplace where difficult conversations become collaborative problem-solving sessions. And honestly, that's when leadership stops feeling like swimming upstream and starts feeling like the rewarding, energising work it's meant to be. Want to dive deeper into using the cultural web with your team? I'd love to help you map out what's happening in your workplace and give you the conversation tools to create positive change. Drop me a message, let's chat about how this could work for your specific situation.